You're live. All right. So welcome to Worldwide Slot Car Chat on Zoom number 160. We got a bunch of people here. Let's talk slot cars. And does anybody have anything they want to show and tell? I've got a little quickie, but I won't necessarily upstage anybody. So does anybody want? I won't upstage anybody with this show and tell. It's not impressive. So does anybody have anything they'd like to show and tell before me? If so, raise your hand. Don's got his hand up. What you got today, Don?
Toy I picked up, kind of interesting.
What is
Z3?
Oh, yeah, isn't that a Cartrix?
Yes, it is.
Ah, cool.
It works. Needs new tires on it, but I got this as a group of parts, plus this one also, but it's not complete. But there were enough parts in the box to be able to complete one of them. So
nice. What does the chassis look like?
well, very interesting little chassis. It's actually a potted chassis, but it's a front motor drive.
Okay.
Oh, really?
What?
And
Okay.
the rear axle has a pod for the axle holder,
Interesting.
which this one's not screwed together. This is a separate piece back here that screws into the chassis. So without it, you don't have anything to push the axle bearings into.
So the rear axle pod and the motor pod are separate pods.
Yes.
That's basically modular at its core.
And I bought these mostly for the parts so I could put this one together. Since I had a complete car there to begin with, I didn't even bother to take this out of the bag. This is the same car, only it's the convertible model.
And blue, yeah. Yeah, the red one looks like it's in pretty good condition too.
Yeah, it's all there. The only cosmetic damage that I could find on it is this little spot right here is cracked.
Mm-hmm. But it's not. It didn't lose any pieces. There's just a fracture.
Yeah, just a crack.
Very cool. Where'd you pick it up? Off of eBay or?
Yeah, just
Yep.
an eBay. I put my low ball bid on it. Nobody bid against me, so I ended up with it.
Those are the best.
Yep. The kind I like.
The kind I like. Yeah, perfect.
All right. That's all I got to show.
Thanks for showing. Let's see what else we got going. Anybody else got any show and tell? Well, Chris is here. You got anything to show and tell, Chris?
I'm looking.
Okay. Well, while you're looking, I'll do mine. Shouldn't take very long. Let me make sure I'm got the right thing. Here we go. And share screen. So just a setup plate, no super big deal. This particular one is 1/24th scale. It's rather large. Basically, I did the design based off of the largest 1/24th car I had in my possession, which was a Carrera 1/24th DTM. And so I made the setup plate slightly longer and wider than the DTM. It is two-ended and two-sided, so this side obviously has the wheel reliefs so that you can set the car on and not make flat spots. It's got a braid relief on this end with a nice long slot, and then no braid relief on that end with a nice long slot. And then the other side is flat, so no wheel detents, and then braid relief and slot on one side and no braid relief and slot on the other side. One of the things that I kind of wanted to show is one of the problems with putting the detent on the bottom is having to support where the print is going to have to be in midair. And so this is an example of, this is actually a fairly clean supported surface. The issue with supporting filament printing and even resin printing is that you have an ugly surface to deal with. No matter how good your support system is, it either doesn't come off at all, or it comes off and leaves a not very pretty surface to deal with. And then I remembered that PLA and PETG do not stick to one another, and a trick that some people use to basically create a support of one of those materials and print in the other material. So what I did was I created a PETG support shim, essentially, that I then put on the printer, put on the print bed as it's printing, just before it prints that next layer. And I tried to do another one and get good pictures of that process, but basically imagine this is the side that's down against the printer. And once the print gets up to this level, I stick that shim in there, and then the printer just keeps going, printing on top of the shim as if it were support. And the nice thing is you can't even tell, not that that's a very good picture, but this surface is just as smooth as the top surface.
So really, sorry to interrupt, Greg, but it looks like you've made a mold for your print, right? You're kind of casting.
Yeah. That's a pretty good comparison. And yeah, the final product does not stick to the mold. If you do the shim or mold or support, whatever you want to call it, in PLA and then print in PLA, it's going to stick. They're going to be stuck together. But as long as you use an incompatible material with for your shim and your print, then this works just fine.
Could you use that method for printing bodies, for example, that are a little more complex, where you would have the non sort of sticky material on the inside and then print the body around it?
Not really, because this really only works when you can do it on a flat surface, because the way a 3D printer does is the entire layer at one time, and then the next layer, and then so on and so forth. It won't be able to print inside a cutout area. Right, so it basically, imagine stacking paper up, and you stack you stack pieces of paper until you get up to a certain point, and then you can stick something in the hole and then let it stack more paper on top of that. But you couldn't have a complex three-dimensional shape that then is able to have paper stacked on it from the bottom to the top.
Is there any problems with registering the two parts together? I mean, is that a tough job?
It doesn't. I mean, I put magnets in my little shim.
Uh-huh.
You can kind of see the hazy color difference there where the magnets are. But no, I mean, I just made sure that the shim would fit without too much slop, and wasn't too high or too low. And then, I told the printer to pause at the appropriate time. So then I just go in and stick that piece in there, and it stays in place. I added the magnets just as a precaution to help that piece stay in place. But the printer basically just goes, over top of it and keeps printing as if the printer doesn't know there's a shim there or there's not a shim there. I just told it what to do, and it did what I told it to do. But yeah, no, I mean, if it was a more complex thing, then I might have a little bit more of a challenge to, if this was not just a rectangle, if it was a more complex shape.
Okay, so I thought you were laying your shim down on the plate first and then printing over the top of it.
No, and that's why I wanted to get better pictures of it. Of the process. I print it up to that point where the shim goes in. Then I stick the shim in, and then the printer keeps going from that point up.
Oh, I got you. So you had that surface done, that inside surface done, right?
I had
where the slot is, more or less, and then you push that over the top.
Well, up and where the slot is doesn't exist until it gets to the area that needs the support.
Yeah.
So basically, this is the bottom that we're looking at. So the printer prints this rectangle opening for 2 millimeters. And then when it gets to 2 millimeters, it needs to print this slot opening and then fill in the rest. But it won't be able to do that in midair, so that's why it needs support. And it's at that point that I put the shim in. When it's ready to print the slot and all the stuff around the slot, that's when I put that shim support in, and it prints the slot and everything around the slot on top of the shim, and then continues up from there. And then we get this.
What material did you say that was? Was that PETG?
You can do it one way or the other. If you want your final product to be PETG, then you print the shim in PLA.
Yeah, those two don't stick together. So
those two don't stick together.
And I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
And there are other materials that don't stick together, but that's the most commonly used for for easy pull away supports. I could do the same thing in my multi-material printer and basically print the PETG one layer and then the PLA one layer and so on and so forth. But the problem gets, it's very wasteful to do that because you have to purge a lot of PLA so that the PETG is pure, and vice versa. So I'd be wasting more volume than this shim just in purge, so that it's a clean material each time it switches between material. This like I said, this can pretty much only be done when you're wanting to support a large flat surface area. If this was any smaller, I would just let the bridging be what it is. But it took longer for me to pull away and clean up the supports because I had printed with supports a few times first, and the supports didn't want to come away very easily because it's very thin. And then I had to use an X-Acto blade to scrape away some of the other stuff left behind. And I'm like, ding, I remember this, let's try that. And it worked out great. So yeah, just a simple setup plate to give the guys in my club that don't already have setup plates. And obviously if anybody wants one, I'll probably upload the files. There's other setup plates models online, but none of them had all of these features in one plate. They either had some of them or other features that I didn't care about or whatever. So
here's a really silly question. Over time, does the material move or stretch or do anything, or is it very stable?
I would not say that this is in the same toolbox as an aluminum or Corian or other material. It's pretty good. PLA is pretty rigid, and I print them with multiple or so a much thicker wall than you normally require in a 3D print, in a decorative 3D print. So just like for my tire grinder, the functional parts that need to be stiff are printed with additional material to help them remain stiff for a long period of time.
And you could do the slot it trick for chassis flattening with it. If it ever got a little funny, just throw it in the water.
I probably wouldn't do that with PLA. Probably what I'd do, if that happened, what I would do is put the whole thing on my print bed and then warm up the print bed to printing bed temperature, and then put something heavy on top, like a saw blade, and then just let it cool so that it went back to flattish. But yeah, I mean, this isn't going to be for people competing at high levels. This is for the guy. We're currently running Scalextric BTCC cars with urethane tires, and yeah, any car benefits from perfection, as Chris has demonstrated. But this is good enough. If you got one wheel that's not touching on this thing, it sure ain't going to be touching on an aluminum, a milled metal plate.
So it's good enough to show that you've got problems.
It's good enough to show that you've got problems. And with the wheel detents, it's something you can sit your car on and not make flat spots, while waiting for racing or storing, I guess, if you really wanted to go that far. So yeah, that's it. Any other questions? I'm open to suggestions on things to add or improve, but I think it does the job and has options that are useful.
How deep is your braid relief, Greg?
I went 2 millimeters. Do you think that's thick enough?
More than thick enough.
Okay. I started with 1, and I'm like, well, some of the 1/24 braids are pretty thick, and 2 gave me more room to do the shim thing. So
yeah, no, that's yeah. I mean, anything narrower, and you could either use, if guys want to get. You can put thin strips of styrene and just lay them on either side of the slot, or a few layers of masking tape. because, 2 mil that's deep.
Yeah, it's not meant to be a guide relief setup. It's meant to just keep pressure off the braids while your car is on the plate.
I mean, it certainly could be used for that to set up the front end. You just have to put a couple of temporary shims either side of the slot, and you can use it for that as well.
Yep, that would be pretty easy too. I could make printed things that slip in there at 1 millimeter, 0.8 millimeters to be whatever your final relief is desired to be.
Yeah.
I'll probably go ahead and whip that out later on as an option.
Being that thin and 1.5 inches, 2 inches long, or whatever the thing is, they may be too flexible enough that they may warp after time. I don't know.
Little inserts, yeah, probably.
I would tend to use pieces if I needed a ton of space, I'd be tended to use a couple of brass strips or some styrene strip or even tape, depending on how thick or high or lower I had to go.
Yep, easy modification. All right, so I think that's done. And Mike and Dennis put their hands up. What you want to share, Mike?
See if I channeled my inner Chris. Anybody see what I did?
You fix up the helmet a little, or?
No.
I don't have one, so I don't know what I'm.
Front wheel wells.
Yeah, you opened up the wheel well. I was about to say that.
Wow, that's awesome.
Did you open up the back as well?
No, I haven't done that yet.
He's gonna.
Leave it to you to point that out.
Lighting the body is cheating.
Just a simple question.
Yeah.
Lighting the body is cheating.
Yeah, right.
But thanks for the idea. I'm going to do it.
Thing. I looked at those and I went, "Oh, they don't belong like that."
No.
And it doesn't usually do that to me, but this time it did. I don't know why, but it's kind of cool.
Unfortunately, that was a bit of a miss. They were never they were never going to be opened up just for the structural integrity of the body, but they were supposed to be, the recesses on the top of the fender wells and the back were supposed to be painted flat black, and that'll be done for the Oliver version.
So wait, looking at it now, you said the ones on the back. I don't see any on the back.
No. Look at the rear end of the car.
Oh, the rear end of the car. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, you're right. I didn't even notice those. Ooh, those are going to be a bear to get at.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
You might want to just try a little flat black paint first and just let it settle in before, because if you by the time you cut those vents out, there's not a lot of meat left back there.
Yeah.
If you wanted to get really funky, you could cut them all out and then paint a piece of thin styrene flat black and stick it in behind. But that's just like painting them flat black in the first place. So
yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I don't know if my painting skills are sufficient to do that, but I might give it a try. The center ones, the ones directly in the center, I might be able to do. I don't know if you can see that. I can't really see them, but there's some slats in the center there that can be, I think, done.
Yeah.
Rather than just the corners. So we'll see.
Yeah, try it. Give it a shout, and if it doesn't work out, we'll be happy to sell you a new one.
Yeah, sure. If I can find them. Oh, and I also drilled out the stacks.
Yeah.
So that was from Geo. Geo drilled those out, and I went, "Oh, I'm going to do that." It's really kind of fiddly to do, though. So, but it's fun. That's all I got.
All righty. Thank you for sharing, sir. And Dennis? What you got?
Yeah, hi guys. I know I missed last week, but I'm here this week, and this is what I got to show.
Hmm.
This is the new NSR Formula 22, I think F22, I think they call it. And I got a white one, painted it pink and blue. Surprise, surprise. And I used a set of Atalaya decals and an Interlagos Fernando helmet, and produced this car from last year. The early part of last year when they ran a lot of pink. You remember they ran the first couple of races with the pink, and then they ran later on with the, oh, that's too much light from the
Looks
side.
great, Dennis.
Yeah, it came out really came out really nice. The Atalaya decals are sized for the Polarcar car, which means that some of them are a little bit too big for this car, and others are a little too small because the proportions are not quite the same across the two cars. But in general, it came out really well.
Black lead wires wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, black lead wires wouldn't hurt. You're right. However, you know, it's an NSR car, so it has its white lead wires still. I could always hide them underneath the body a little better than they are right now. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing. I heard you guys talking about me last week, and I don't remember exactly what you were saying, but there was a whole bunch of stuff that I was about to talk about. But yeah, you can switch the spotlight off now.
Didn't you write notes down to remember what you were talking? I don't.
Unfortunately, no. I thought to myself, oh, next week when I'm on, and quite honestly, the reason I missed last week was because I had my track open and I was playing with cars, and I completely forgot about the fact that there was a Zoom call going on. So my apologies for that.
What did you do underneath on that, Dennis?
Underneath on the car?
Yeah.
Nothing. It's
okay.
Apart from I put the wood guide on, and I changed the rear gear to a smaller slotted gear, and it has ultra grips on it instead of the stock super grips. But other than that, I've done nothing to the car.
How does it run?
It runs pretty good. It's not as good as an 8689. It doesn't have the traction that the 8689s have. Primarily, I think, because of the bigger wheel and shorter aspect ratio of the tire, and the fact that the motor has been moved 1/4 of an inch further forward in the car, and it's a much longer car than the 8689.
Yeah, I think on our spray glue track, it's going to work really good.
It could, yeah. It could indeed. The rest of I mean, if you drive the car and you keep the tail in line, it goes really well. It feels really nice. But you've got to be so careful with it being that long that it gets out of line quite quickly.
Have you heard of people breaking the gears like I've seen on a couple of the chats or forums?
No, but I haven't seen anybody run them apart from me so far. Lindell's been driving a few, and as far as I know, he hasn't had a problem yet. Certainly the pinions, those funny brass pinions, seem to work okay.
All righty.
Anyway, so that's me for now.
Thanks for sharing, Dennis. And Jim, what you got?
Well, I got something new, and it is I'm always on the lookout to figure out how to clean tires during a race. And I know at the Enduros, some people had cleaning blocks and things like that. And so I got one of these.
Oh, yeah, Ed's. Yeah.
I'm not sure if anybody's seen it or not. It's new. I just got it today. I haven't tried it yet. I just took out doing a video on it. And as they say in full disclosure, he sent this thing to me for no charge. So take that for what it's worth. But it looks really good. I haven't actually tried it yet. But here's the basic unit. And to give you an idea how big it is, it just fits the 32nd scale car very nicely. There you can see how the pads are attached. It looks like just regular, some kind of microfiber ish, held on with Velcro. I still have that plate on it there to cover the contacts. It's running on 2 9-volt batteries. I believe it's only, I haven't double checked it yet, but I think it's only running on one. Is that series or parallel? I can never remember the two. It's running on 9 volts with twice the amperage.
I was going to say
It's
probably
parallel.
Parallel.
I think I haven't taken it apart yet. So you can obviously just run on 1 9-volt batteries. The other 2 in the back are for spare batteries. You want to just put them in the unit instead of putting them in your pit box. A little under 6 ounces, easy to carry around. That you can see the clip on the side or on the front, made for carrying around. And here's what it looks like a little bit better so you can see it. And
just kind of wedged in the slot.
yeah, when you put the car on, I didn't touch it to the pad because I haven't put anything on the pad yet.
Cool.
So it
Looks like you can carry your keys around on it too.
Absolutely, yeah. It looks interesting. I'm going to be doing a review on it for my YouTube channel. I think the price is pretty reasonable. When I first saw it was $32.50. That's kind of a little pricey, but when you get 2 9-volts and shipping with it, I think it's very reasonable.
That's
So
not bad.
that's
And-
the whole
and
thing.
two different-
You can buy them on eBay if you're looking to purchase. I've lost my cursor. Can you stop my share?
Sure. And that includes multiple.
Yeah, as you see it there.
Yeah. Cool.
And so it looks like a pretty cool product. I'm going to try it this weekend at a race and see how it works.
I was going to say the real test, the real pudding is the
The
test.
proof of the
What
pudding
I'm,
is in the
what I'm
eating, yeah.
concerned is I want to use it to clean tires very quickly.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure what I'm going to put. If I put lighter fluid on there, it's going to evaporate too fast.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just going to put a real thin coat, so it's just barely damp, of NSR oil, just to spin it in oil so they're not wet, and I can put a car right back on the track. That's my plan, and see how that works.
So it looks like Henry's got competition already.
I mean, Henry's is different. They similar but not the same.
Yeah, it looks very well made. It's obviously 3D printed. So like I said, I'm looking forward to actually putting it into use and doing a review on it.
I did mine with a grinder and with the same for some fluid, and with the roller with rubber bands on it, what you call it, sticky tape. And I can assure you it works, because you've got 3 seconds and you're done already. So and sometimes it takes you half a lap if you want to clean your tires. So we use it now in races, and it works. You're much quicker than the rest.
All right, thanks for showing that off, Jim, and looking forward to your video. And Big Dan, what would you like to show today?
Well, unlike Jim, I'm going to show something old. So I'll just hit the share thing there, if I can find it.
We're just looking to it.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I won't be recommending any of your products anymore. Okie doke, are we live?
Coming.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
cool.
These are depending on where you're from and what you believe. These are either an Atlas or a Marusan Japanese 24 scale Lotus from way back in the mid 60s. I've previously had these Marusan cars with the stamped aluminium chassis, but this is the first one I've actually managed to find with the Atlas motor. And I got it from a bloke locally who's just joined the hobby in the last couple of months and bought bags and bags and bags of old stuff and advertised some of it on one of our local, not sort of like an online auction site, but something just like a buy and sell
Big
thing.
Dan, sorry to interrupt. It looks like it's got the beveled gears in the back too.
Yeah,
Bevels, yeah,
Um,
brass bevels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, it has, John. Yeah, yeah. Oh, well,
those are when well adjusted. Those gears are wonderful.
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah. Of course, it's got the mandatory shriveled up braids, as most second-hand old cars have got. Moving on, I think we were looking at some of the old scale electric cars a couple of weeks ago that had that clip-in motor bracket thing.
Yeah.
A couple of these are, they're not in very good condition, as you'll see. Okay. Yeah. So underneath there, those braids are remarkably good. I might reuse those. But you can see the white body on, comparatively, the white body on the left has been hacked about unceremoniously. So what I did with that one basically was strip out all the little detail bits like the fuel filler caps and the lights and things on the back and the interior, and just salvage those and threw the body. It's pretty much straight in the bin. If you look on this one here where I'm throwing the cursor out, you see this bloke obviously needs some lessons in soldering, because they're not very good.
3 pieces there.
But it was amazing, back in those days. I can remember I can remember that far back. Don't making any comments. I remember as a kid, we didn't have a lot of tools and soldering irons and things, so we really had to jury rig for anything that went wrong. So the next bit is just
those rear tires, Big Dan, don't look stock for some reason.
They're definitely not stock, John. Yes, there's something added on. I'm pretty sure that by the time they were added on, you couldn't get the old narrower original tires. The next panel is just a little bit. When we talked at the difference between FT16 and FT16D, people talk about FT16D or just 16Ds, but the N-bell drive didn't have the D on the end way back, so that's just a bit of a clarification there. And most scale electric cars were N-bell drive. We also, there's a couple of things there too, that those type of cars that we saw, those ones with that clip-in motor bracket unit at the back, this is just a one unit with the motor bolted to a plastic, or it could have been die cast with the axle going through, and the bearings as such were just the holes in the plastic or die cast. So one of the ones I pulled to bits, there was that much slop in the axles that you couldn't have done anything with it much. So the Mabuchi motors, I just flick back. The ones that were Mabuchi were generally had a rectangular hole in them, and then some of the later cars, they had coloured cans. They could have been blue, they could have been pink, and they were, I'm not sure, it was a company in Hong Kong, I think, that they were often called Raymond motors. So, and they had an oval hole, so they were pretty easy to spot the difference. There was mention of some of the cars that were in that series last week or the week before, and the AC Cobra was also in that series. So the snap-in motor thing. So with those motors, with those motor brackets that slog out, if I was ever going to use them again, I think I might have used some of those little Revo slot gear reducers, which step down the Revo slot axles or the bearings from 3mm to 3/32, and just use those as a de facto bearings. Just drill out the hole a bit in the back bracket, and they'd a lot better than just the slogged out plastic, I can tell you. So moving on there, we can see the slightly modified body, which was consequently scrapped. Now, you have to admire that the Scale Electrics pulled out all the stops to make a detailed interior back in the late 60s. Have a look at that. We just got a bloke's head stuck in the flat pan. I thought that was worth showing,
Wow.
So yeah, that's probably why they tinted the windscreens on some of those, so you couldn't see inside. So moving on a bit.
I guess it was driven by Bob.
Yeah.
That was a way to get ahead.
Yeah. Thanks for
That'd be good for
Yeah.
vacuum forming right there. You'd have plenty of Lexan.
Yeah. This part of the interior that just clips into the body, snap fit into the body, and the other end sort of butts up against that little motor bracket thing. Moving on, 32nd scale K&B Challenger chassis. This is the one where the motor was part just you can see the little pins here that go through the front of the motor, and just the chassis is adjustable for body length. I've already had a couple of these in the past. This thing actually ran, even though it's probably about getting on for 60 years old, it ran. The only disappointment was that the body was missing a little bit of a hacking at the front here, and the body was at the back. The back panel was, that's just a bit closer look up at the chassis. The gear threads onto the axle, the spur gear threads onto the axle. And then you've got just lock nuts and things for the wheels. It's not a bad looking representation of the chaparral. The stacks mightn't be all most accurate, and there's the missing back balance or panel or whatever you want to call it. The next two are a couple of cheap and well, they're actually the Japanese HIT, Dennis.
Yeah,
they're HIT. I believe was an abbreviation of Hitachi, because of a division of the Hitachi company apparently made these. This one's got one over on the left has got two wheelbase options. The one on the right's only a single wheelbase. And the back wheels on these look like they were the inspiration for Carrera. If you can, think of some horrible wheel configurations you can make, they were pretty close. Just another look at those upside down. Looks like it's an aluminium gear on that one, aluminium or alloy gear there.
Pot metal they call it.
Okay, yep. And someone appears to have just put through a bit of brass tube or something as the axle on that one. I haven't had much of a chance to pull these a bit.
The wheels, Dan, on the other one look like they're Revell.
Yeah, they are.
They could be.
The front ones on that other one.
Yeah. Top condition braze again as expected. Up there.
Yeah, I would say the front wheels on that upper one were Revell. The rears might have been monogram.
Yeah, I think there could be a bit of, as I said, given time and the availability of parts, probably a bit of a mix and match, I'd say there, Dennis. Yeah. That was a nice looking thing. The only problem is it's just the top half of a Scalextric van wheel body in very good condition with the the windscreen and everything there. So I thought I'd throw that into the package to. Pardon me. I think last fortnight or last week we were talking about the little Offenhauser, Scalextric Offenhauser cars, which were pretty much like I guess Offenhauser, I think, was the engine builder. Dennis, that sound right? Yeah. But the other Scalextric version was, I think, called a Watson Roadster or something like that. So, this one's a Polysteel BRM, supposedly.
Attempt.
Yeah. Attempt. I'm always amazed that I've actually got a Shadow and a Matra. I'm always amazed why Polysteel decided to do these long wheel arches. I mean, the wheels weren't, although Polysteel did have a fairly big back tire on them, they were nowhere big enough that needed a wheel well or a wheel arch that size. So again, but they were always a little bit short and a little bit wide. Inspiration for some of the modern performance brands, probably.
Yeah, it looks like a panini on wheels.
Who on wheels?
A panini sandwich on wheels. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is that a Canadian thing?
Maybe it's Italian Canadian, but yeah, I love it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The kind that gets smooshed.
Yeah. Chris also mentioned during last week's chat, I think the little sprint cars made by Eddie Sauerback at EJ Hobbies. This was one that a raceway owner in my hometown bought back in the early 90s, and he when he moved away to a warmer part of Australia, he decided to leave it in my care. So it's been in my care for nearly 30 years. So there's the chassis with an FT16 motor in it, with good wires and good braids because I put them in there. There's it's a very smooth runner, mainly because it hasn't got a back gear in it at this stage. The braids aren't all that good, and that's just a look at the body, which I painted, and I never ever got round to painting the driver. And so this looks like we're pretty much back to.
Does your,
Yeah.
Dan, does your Atlas motor run?
It runs, Chris. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
If you if you have any problems with it, I've got tons of those. I've got both the 206 and the 208, and a bunch of parts. So if you have any issues, give me a shout.
Yeah, I think at one stage, I think I actually have got a couple of the just plain short chassis for the for the Atlas motors. There might be 206s, I think, Chris. I thought I had a couple of other things to share here, but I can't see them. If I find them, I'll check in another folder here.
Chris, did you find something that you wanted to share?
Well, now that Den's, I'm looking at not specific. If I can find what I'm looking for, I will bring it up. But
okay.
Look, I will refer to something back to something Chris talked about the other day. All the motors worked with the 4 cars that had motors. The FT16s, when I first applied power, they screeched and grinded. But Chris also mentioned last week that the FT16, which is the end-bell drive motor, just scroll forward here. It's got what's called a blind bearing there. In other words, there's the shaft doesn't stick out a bit. When I disassembled one of these motors, and I think it was the one out of the white atrocity, I even just rotating it without the brushes in, it was that rough. I just put a bit of oil in the end of that and spun it again, and you wouldn't believe the difference. So
yeah.
But that's about all I've got at this stage. If I can find those up, I'm fairly sure I did some other things, although I might have been. No, I didn't. No, it was just the sprint cars, the little EJ sprint car that I added to the thing. So okay, I'll close that off and stop the share. And
I stopped your share earlier because we were just looking at a blank screen.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to just close. Yeah, and I was.
There's that one that has the rounded hole in it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, in the Electra, yeah. Is it the Electra or the Javelin? One of the two. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Don. Yeah. Do you guys have to update your Zoom before you started today's show? Or?
I think I did last week.
Yeah, last week. I think, yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. That I might have missed out last week. That's why I had to do it there. Okay, all done for now.
All right. If you find anything else, just put your hand back up.
Okay.
Yeah, and Dennis put his hand back up.
Yeah, I did, because I saw that Joanne is on. And so
Progress.
oh, hang on a minute. I'll unplug this damn extra camera, which I need now. Oh. There we go. Give me a moment. Because Dewan is on, he probably would like to see these.
Wow.
Dewan and I have a big trade going on. I have a whole bunch of old Revell cars. These 4 Formula Ones and 8 or 9 132nd scale cars that I'm restoring for him. I just thought I'd give him an update. Dewan, this is how far I've got. I still have to print the numbers and put them on. Only one of these cars had an exhaust pipe, which is this piece here, right, that plugs in down the side of the car. Can't do this with two hands. There we go. So it plugs in down the side of the car like that. There was only one, so I've had to actually make a couple. So I have a couple here that I've made up out of styrene.
Wow.
That just a couple of pieces of styrene that will work. Hopefully, they'll go. Basically, sorry. There we go. They'll go in there. Eventually, they'll get glued in position. I had to make a couple of new screens. The little arrow screen that's on the red and the silver one. Those are the originals, and I used those just to cut a couple of pieces of. Difficult to see with this camera, but a couple of pieces of Lexan, which I've glued into the others. Mechanically, the chassis are pretty good. They just needed to be cleaned up. And I managed to find Ortman tires that fit the car, so they fit nicely. I forgot to bring one of the chassis, so I don't know.
I thought those exhaust pipes were cast and molded. I'm like, they made those out of pieces of styrene.
Dennis, what kind of glue do you use?
So there we go. Those are
like
the chassis, or one of the chassis. They have those long old motors in them. And as I say, I found some tires. The fronts were Rusket front end, the rears. I'm not sure what original car they were for, but they fit nicely. I've repainted the wheel inserts, and so we're looking good, Duane. I just thought I'd let you know.
Mike had a question for you, Dennis.
Okay.
Dennis, what kind of glue do you use to glue stuff like that together, that real fine stuff?
On those ones, I'm using Shugu or E6000 for most of it, because these old bodies are printed or are molded in something that's pretty close to Tupperware, and absolutely nothing sticks to it.
I was thinking more about the exhaust pipes too.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna use some. I'll probably use some Shugu for that as well.
Oh, okay.
I had to
glue them in, but to glue the pieces together, if you use styrene pieces.
Oh, to glue the pieces together when I was making making like those little, like the little bits there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the liquid styrene cement.
Oh, okay.
All of that was just splashed in liquid styrene and left to harden and then filed to shape. I'm still busy with some of that.
I see.
But yeah, on the bodies, the silver body, I don't know if you can see it there. It has a big crack. Yeah, it has a big crack down the back, along the back side of the car. So it's been. Wonder if you can see it. Yeah, there's a whole bead of E6000 down the inside of the car to try and hold that all together. Yeah. So yeah, so that's how those are going. And that's pretty much me for now.
Cool. Michael?
You've done an amazing job,
Yeah.
Now we have I got an amazing deal on this, so I'm trying to do an amazing job. Duane had he had a whole spare monogram Riverside 1/24 scale race set. John's going, ooh. Yeah, he knows what I'm talking about.
I think I remember you showing
complete with a Chaparral and a McLaren Elva.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dennis. You've done an amazing job.
Yeah,
I just landed. I just landed.
Sounds like a good trade for you, Dennis.
Say again?
That sounds like a good trade for you.
Oh, hell yes. I'm very happy with the trade.
You've been smiling the whole time you've been on today.
Yep.
And Dewan smiling
They're
too.
coming out pretty well. I mean, to repaint those bodies was a bit of a problem. Two of them, the yellow and the blue one, were already repainted when I got them from Dewan, but you could scratch the paint off with your fingernail because it was old, I guess, Humbrol or some old enamel that had been brush painted on top of this Tupperware style polypropylene that they used for those bodies, and just comes straight off. So I had to actually prime those and then spray them with the yellow and the blue.
What type of paint did you use, Dennis, so that it would adhere?
I used a bondable primer from Krylon, I think, or no, from Rust-Oleum. And then I put a Tamiya plastic, hard plastic body paint, a TS paint over the top. But it's the primer that's the important part there. I figured that because they were, the one body was silver, the one body was red, and I couldn't go straight onto that with the color, so I had to start with the primer. So I used a bondable primer. Otherwise, I might have used an adhesion promoter like the Bulldog stuff or something like that, but that's clear. And so I wanted the gray underneath to get the decent color when I was done.
I'm just totally excited. I tell you.
Yeah, they're looking good. They're looking good. I haven't run any of them, but I've run them up on a power supply, but I haven't actually run the cars yet. But I will.
I want to know if you're going to set up that Riverside set.
I don't know where I'm going to set it up. Have you any idea how big that thing is?
Yeah, it's huge.
Right.
Are you kidding? Oh my gosh!
It's a big. It probably takes about 12 or 14 feet long by 4 or 5 feet wide to set the whole thing up. I tried to do it on a table in my garage, and then I found that I ended up with like 3 tables and pieces of wood in between. I would have been better off setting it up on the floor. But yeah, it's big. But that's going to be fun. I might just make some kind of a framework that fits over the top of my current track, and then build it out there, and then lift it up or down, depending on which track I want to use. But yeah, I'm very excited about that. That's one of those old, what should you call it?
Holy Grails.
Been on the wish list and the bucket list for years.
Yeah, and the one thing I was told, you know how the tabs are really tight because the track fits so well together?
Yeah.
You put a little bit of Vaseline or something on the front so that it'll slide through so that it won't break. Yeah,
I'll do that. Yeah, I haven't put it hard. I haven't put it together tight yet. Certainly, but when I do, I'll make sure that I lubricate those.
Right.
You wouldn't want to break them now.
Sorry.
Yeah, Chris.
What when you were asking about glues, what glue do you normally use?
Well, I don't do a lot of gluing styrene.
Okay.
So that's why I was wondering if it was just regular styrene cement or.
There's for gluing styrene, there is nothing in the world better than styrene cement. It's what it's built for.
Yeah.
And if you want to speed up the process, if you don't have any, you can buy stuff called Pro Weld or Tenax, which is for styrene, and it sets very, very quickly as opposed to, Tester's styrene cement, which takes ages to go on.
Yeah.
And
it was Testers that I was using because my bottle of Pro Weld was empty.
You left the top off?
I didn't close it properly.
Yeah.
And I used most of it.
Yeah.
It does tend to evaporate rather quickly, even if
it's basically MEK inside the bottle.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you know what I do is I actually store the bottle upside down, and it'll last forever. Because the light ends go on top, and if they've got nowhere to go.
That makes sense.
It's a good
as
idea.
long as it's properly closed. Yeah.
As long as it's properly, and you'll make You'll know pretty quick if it's properly closed. Whoops. Put a little paper towel under it or something, just in case.
I do the same thing with my tester's paint, and it lasts forever. It works really, really well.
The other thing that I do when I'm using a bottle of that stuff, some of those bottles are just the right size that if you take the top of a Tamiya spray can, rattle can, turn it upside down, they fit nicely inside that little clip in the middle. And then when you put them down, they've got a much broader base and you don't knock them over so easy. Because I'll knock anything over.
Well, yeah, that's a great tip, because that's usually how you lose half of that stuff is through spillage. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I do it with my flux bottles and things like that too. And if you cut the outside edges away, you can have like just this little saucer or this little rim around the bottom with the center section.
Right. It would be like a pair of shoes for your bottle.
That's a new print idea, Greg.
There you go.
I was just going to say that's a super
bottle savers. Yeah.
Like this.
Bottle boots.
Like that. See that?
There.
This one.
Yeah.
I've just cut it away like that, and then this is a bottle of flux, which I have in a baggie to seal it up, but it fits perfectly in there, and it makes for a much broader base that you don't knock it over so easily.
Yep. Good
wow,
idea.
You'd almost think that an engineer thought of that. Well done.
Yeah. Not this engineer. Some friend of mine did that first.
I mean, reduce, reuse, recycle.
Which I shamelessly copied.
Repurpose something that would normally go in the garbage
Well,
can.
just remember, originality is just undetected plagiarism. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's true.
There is nothing new under the sun. All right. Anybody else got anything they want to show and tell, or we move to Club Corner? All right, let's move to Club Corner.
Did Chris find what he was looking for? Sorry to interrupt.
I just gave him the opportunity.
Still looking.
Okay, sorry.
We can always circle back. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time. So yeah, past, present, or future, more than one person racing at a time. Talk. Heck, if you're just racing by yourself, now's the time to talk about it too. So Mike put his hand up. What happened in your neck of the woods, Mike?
Well, there were only two of us this week, so we had the brilliant idea to put a ghost car on each lane.
Ooh.
And it was interesting. Luckily, I am more willing to take risks than Ratby is. And I made a couple of really good passes, and that was enough, especially on the last race. We had really close races between the two of us, and not a lot of crashing this time. Shiggy wasn't here, so that probably is explaining it. He tends to crash more than we do, but he's fast. But at any rate, we had the last race. I was a squeaker. I was less than a half a lap ahead, and just about out of fuel at the same time. And it's like, oh man, am I going to make it? And luckily I did, so I won that one. But it was really interesting to have two ghost cars, and of course they were different times, and they would end up periodically coming right where you needed them not in between them. And that really made a difference in the racing. It actually was strategic to make the passes there. And sometimes I could get in a place where I could stick him that he was stuck if I made it. And then so that I could gain a half a lap doing that particular thing at all. And truthfully, in the last race, that was the difference. Just being able to make one pass like that. So it was really a lot of fun. We had a really good time. So,
did you do
anyway?
Did you do two races for all of your races or just one of them?
All three, yes. I haven't put them up yet. I haven't had a chance yet.
Okay.
Busy things, but yeah, I did it for all three races. And one of the times we raced Cobra Coupes. Both of us have a Cobra Coupe with a inline 3DP chassis, and the cars were within a couple hundredths of a second of each other, so it was really a pretty close race. You couldn't count on getting ahead, so you had to really watch it as far as the crashing goes. So you couldn't count on going to catch up if you screwed up. So consequently, we were both pretty good about that, and with the two cars, the two extra ghost cars, it was you had to really concentrate. Those cars, those particular, they're both MRRC Cobra Daytona coupes, and they're very narrow and very tall, and that makes them a little bit difficult to manage. The 3DP chassis is pretty good, and you know, they're both weighed about the same, and you put lead weight down low, but still it's not enough to entirely compensate. And so you really had to focus on those two cars. It was like one of those races you get done and you're like, oh, how can I keep that up? And it was, you know, it's only 20 minutes, but still it's enough. I don't know, those who race analog don't have any idea what it takes to run a fair amount of time, because there's no break and you have to keep doing it all the time. And it makes it much more challenging. And
tell them, Mike.
Other than
Tell
endurance.
them, Mike.
But also with traffic, you know, there's traffic in analog in that, you know, you can't just go swinging your tail out when you're next to it. But it's when you're also having to look ahead and behind you in the same lane, it's a whole different thing for digital.
Yeah, it is different. It's much easier in my analog racing to, you know, pay attention to what's in front of you and behind you.
Yeah.
Although, you know, sometimes there's much more crashing going on in that stuff than there is with us, because you got eight cars in 8 lanes. It's mayhem.
Yeah.
It's a completely different skill. And as I've said before, both of the guys that race have said that it's made a difference in their skill level because they've had to pay much more attention to what's going on around them. So it sort of allows them to focus and frees up their attention a little bit somewhere else because they're used to doing that. And it's made them better drivers as a result of it. So, and I've seen that on the analog track. In fact, Shiggy mentioned, he says, "Oh, that was a Monday night move," you know, because we race on Monday nights. So it was pretty good. And Mike and I split the races. Sort of. I won 2 and he won 1. One of my I crashed right off the bat. For some reason, my car was just not working right for the first 2-3 minutes, and that was enough that he was gone. That was it. But the other 2 races were pretty close. So it was good fun. We had a good time. So even if you only have 2 racers with digital, you can really have a good fun day.
Yep.
And it's not boring, that's for sure.
Nope.
All right, that's all.
All right, cool beans. Henry, you are next, sir.
Yes, thank you. We had yesterday night 2 novelties. One of them we raced for the first time in years counterclockwise. And if you race counterclockwise, you have a whole new track. Because the dirt is in there, the braking points are different, there is no a grip on the places you want it to be. So, and the track isn't built for that way to drive. So the marshals have to stand on other places. So it was very challenging. And you can see the young people adapt more than the older one. But on the other hand, the experience makes something good also. So that was an interesting race, and we drove GTs and LMPs in one class, and it's the radical slotted cars, LMP, SOC. So it's a whole pack of different cars. I built a radical with the brushless, and this time it's the first time that the brushless did compete with the other cars. And I've tuned it down to have the max speed, because the max speed of us rule set is 30 kilometers per hour. So I have to drive an 8 pinion and a 33 teeth. Normally we drive a 10 teeth, 11 teeth. So I gave the car to Sebastian, our best driver, because when I have to ride counterclockwise, it's not going to be a good race for the first time. So, and he's the young one and the best driver. The last race, he was fighting with his father, and there was about 1 or 2 meter difference. And now he won the race with 4 laps. So the brushless did succeed the power and the enormous acceleration that he has on the few meters on the steps between the long sides. So the punch he gets, yeah, it was terrible. So it was a very nice experience to see how the brushless did. So that's also our experience over yesterday.
That's the video you posted recently?
Yes, yeah, yesterday. I made yesterday night a video. Yeah.
And was that analog racing or was it?
No, it's analog racing.
Analog.
I 5 minutes ago, I sent an email to Mauricio asking if the ESC and the brushless would fit at the oxygen chip. So I have to wait what his answer is.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
I'm not going to try it because
if nothing else but to find space for an oxygen chip and an ESC all in one car.
Yeah.
The ESC is just as great as the chip.
Yeah.
So you can do it on the chip. I don't think it should be a problem in an LMP.
You could do that. I mean, you could stack or fit both chips in there, but you wouldn't do it. What in the longer term, what you would do is reproduce the brushless ESC on the C chip. The C chip's already got an ESC on board.
True.
So there's no point in having 2 of them there.
That's true.
Just
in the long run,
new digital chip with the brushless capacity.
Yeah.
What he really wants to work on is a motor pod to suit it too.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying, Wayne, that the C chip will communicate with the brushless?
No,
not the C chip.
Not yet, but it would not be.
No, the SG or H chip might by then.
Yeah, the F, the G, or the H might be a brushless chip.
Yeah.
Depending on if brushless motors penetrate the market, there's no need for him to respond immediately with an oxygen device. The brushless has got to penetrate the market to a point where it's worthwhile doing, and that might be years.
Then I don't see the point that you're making. So it's not...
eventually is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Somebody will make one eventually.
Somebody will do one eventually. Yeah. But for now, you'll have to figure out how to.
For now, no.
Chips in there. Yeah.
No. But I was just asking Mauricio if it's possible, because when I'm in for experiments, but not for blowing up chips.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you know what the amp draw is of that ESC and brushless motor?
Not by head, no. I know I can find it, but 10 amps something max. But at this moment, it draws. If I do it on my Marshall, on my HB bench, it draws 235 amps. So it's the same as an NSR motor.
Is that under load?
35 million.
Well, it's freewheeling.
Freewheeling.
Yeah, but
quarter of an amp.
Yeah, it's the same as an SNR motor, the Evo King. So, and an Evo King can drive on an oxygen chip.
Yeah.
So I don't think that will be the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mauricio, if you don't provide Mauricio all the information about amps and stuff, I mean, I don't know what he can take you, right?
Yeah.
He needs to know the specs of the ESC and the brushless motor before he can tell you.
Yeah, I've sent him the link of the DoSlot, so he can see by itself what it is.
Okay, so that's published on the website that sells the ESC and the motor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. By DoSlot. Yeah.
I don't see any. Go ahead.
I was going to say apparently the information is out there, but Henry didn't know it off the top of his head. You're saying you don't remember seeing it on the website?
Yeah, I mean, if basically is a motor like the NSR, I think that the chip should not have any problem driving it.
No.
It'll be
So,
a
but-
complete redesign. It'll be more MOSFETs. It'll be a different brain board altogether.
I mean, yeah, in the future, if it is a direction where we are going, but I don't know.
But for now, it was analog and it was also an experiment, and it turned out to be nice.
Yeah.
Then you get another question: are we going to level up the money-wise the club? Because I'm buying a motor of 65 euros.
Yeah.
And they're buying a motor of 14 euros. So I'm raising the price for the competition. But
They can just simply ban the brushless motor, man.
Yes, of course. They
I
can.
mean, if they all making class out of it. So how much does it cost the SK and the brushless? 65?
Yeah, with shipping 69 euros, something like that.
Yeah, this is the complete kit, ESC and motor.
Yeah, and if you go down, then you can see the motor details.
Okay.
And it's about 1.7 volt until 16. And I don't see something about amps.
That's what I'm looking for.
But if I tested it, it was the same as an NSR motor with rolling on the rolling bench, on the HEB bench.
Is it possible to get amp draw out of the kV values?
No.
No, that's basically
That's
just.
RPMs per volt applied.
Oh, okay. Doesn't look like it's on here. So yeah, I mean.
Look at it, 150,000 RPM.
Yeah.
On no doubt on 16 volt there.
Yeah. That's crazy. Well, I guess we'll find out at some point.
Yeah.
If Maurizio says, maybe.
You can try.
Somebody
You
will
can try. Yeah, and then you blow. Don't call me when you blow the chips.
All right. Thank you very much, Henry. And Dennis, you are next.
Yeah, I just wanted to report on last night's racing at Electric Dreams. I didn't take any videos or photos, I'm afraid. I only thought about it now when we got onto Club Corner. We run it on the 4th Tuesday of the month. We run a fairly casual race at Electric Dreams for classes that we don't run over the weekends when we expect to get bigger crowds. So last night was for Revo GTs. So it was all Revo slot. Basically, you can change the gear ratio. You can use, as long as you use Revo slot gears. You can change the tires as long as you use Revo slot tires. You can change the guide as long as you use a Revo slot guide. A lot of us basically are just running stock car because they run pretty well. They run in the 6-8 to 7 second range on that track, which for me personally is very comfortable range. I'm not one that can run these 5-second laps that some of the guys can run on that track, but it was good. We didn't have a lot of races, 8 guys eventually. There were 9 of us in the store. One guy decided that his car was not capable of running, so he basically just helped out with turn marshalling. So we ran 6 guys and 3 turn marshals, so that meant quite a few track calls. But in general, it was fun. A very good mix of cars. A couple of us ran the old Porsche 911 GT2s. There were, I think, 2 maybe Mercedes CLKs. There were a couple of Ferrari F40s. There were a couple of Marcoses. There were a couple of McLarens. So it was a pretty good mixture. Todd Ullery, who's one of our regulars and one of the guys who's really getting to the point of being a major threat in any class now because his tuning and his setup is so good. He won it last night. He was running a Mercedes CLK, the blue one. Bob Ahudi was second by about 2 feet from me. Bob was running a Marcos, I was running a 911 GT2, and then a bunch of guys after that. So it was a fun event. We have another round for Revo GTs the 4th Tuesday of June, and then from then onwards we get into some other classes. But so yeah, for a Tuesday night event, it was a lot of fun. Nice relaxed racing, no qualifying. We just put everybody in and we randomly assign heats with 8 guys. Of course, we just ran a round robin, so it was 2 sitting out at any point in time. And I think Todd, who was the winner, ran about 150 laps. Down to the guys who came in at the bottom end were running 120 laps, so there wasn't a great amount of difference between them, which is always the case when the cars are a little slower. Everybody's a little closer together. So there was some tight racing. Good fun.
I was looking for a live stream last night.
Yeah, we were a little short-handed because it was just Carlos and me in the store, and I have no idea how that lot works. So I'll make sure next time that he switches it on.
Yeah, Revos are great fun.
Yeah, they're great. Unfortunately, we're struggling a little bit to get parts and supply, so we're a little short on inventory with Revos right now.
Yeah,
but who knows how long that's going to last.
Well, I went racing with IMSA on Monday. We were doing the first round of the Scalextric BTCC series.
Yeah.
Started. You know, great Scalextric cars. You know,
everybody runs Civics.
Most of us were running Civics. There was a couple of the BMWs, and one of the guys had, I forget what the model of the car is, but it's the one with the longer wheelbase.
Maybe a Volkswagen Jetta.
Yeah, I think it might have been the Volkswagen, but
or the MG.
The longer wheelbase cars were disallowed from the series, and he had not read the spec. He had not interpreted the spec correctly. So the funny part is that the guy that was running the wrong car had been racing with us for years and years. You know, he's one of the OG members, so he had an appropriate car from the last time we ran Scalextric BTCCs, but he wanted to run something different and didn't realize that this particular car was not allowed. I honestly don't think it should be disqualified, but you know, he didn't bring his other car. He only brought the new one, so he only had one car to race. But yeah, it didn't do any better or worse than any of the other ones, so I'm not sure what the big deal is. But we ran. Let's see, what did we do for the King of the Hill? It was a Fly F1. No, Ninco F1 with the steering front wheels and everything. No magnet. You know, stock tires still ran great. And then for IROC, we ran a set of 4 NSR Ford GT40s, which was an absolute blast because they're great cars. We ran them as we ran our series of that same class of car with the 17K Baby King motors, so they're more reasonably motored for the relatively short tracks that we race on. And then after that IROC running NSR cars, we went to the Scalextric BTCC cars. Some of the guys had a hard time readjusting their driving style after that. But probably the most notable part of last night's or the night before's racing was how many not technical, but mechanical problems some of the guys had. We had to stop the races like 4 times for different random mechanical issues. Not stop the actual race, but we have a rule that basically says if your car has a mechanical issue, then outside of the green flag, you have a reasonable amount of time to fix it. So we had 1 wire breakage that needed to be fixed, 1 lost screw, and you know, just weird random crap. And it's like, okay, well, good thing this was the first race of the series. But yeah, I think I got a third place in that, and that's always nice to get it on the podium. I was thinking to myself at the beginning, before we started the race, I'm like, did I put lead in this car or not? I don't even remember. I probably did, and then didn't put it in a right place because I've learned so much more about weight, tuning over the years. So I opened up the car and stripped out all the lead and put it back on the track, and it ran okay. So I decided to go ahead and start the racing as is. And then a couple of the heats I had some offs that were not normal. I'm like, okay, I think that was probably why I put lead in the first place. So between heats, I basically ran over and stuck the lead back in. I didn't bother doing any, thinking about where the lead was. I just put it right back in the same places that it was, and it was basically like a couple of grams on either side of the chassis back towards the motor end, and then like maybe 5 grams up behind the guide, because I had the offs were basically understeers. So I'm like, okay, well, give it a little more dig and keep the nose down. And it definitely ran better after that. So yeah, I'll leave the lead alone for next time. But yeah, that was pretty much it. Any kind of race, any kind of slot car racing is good slot car racing. So had a good time hanging out with the dudes. John, your microphone is on and you're making noises, so that's why I'm muting you. So yeah, that's the end of me. Jim put his hand up. What you got, Jim?
When you said club corner past, present, and future, I've got future.
Go for it.
Entries are open now, and I hope a lot of you will come down and race at this. I got my entry in, as did Dennis, and hope to see everybody there. It's limited to 72 entries, which seems like a lot, but there was over 50 last year, and the buzz that was generated by this race, I would not surprise to see it sell out. So if you want to go,
November one or
August.
August.
I didn't hear you.
The date.
Oh yeah, I just pulled this off the screen. Second
weekend of August.
Yeah. So pretty much the same as last year. One major rule change from last year is F1 wheels and tires are not allowed. It's slotted 15.8 millimeter and larger only wheels. There's a couple other little changes, but nothing real major other than that one. Handout motors you can get, you buy now and you'll get them a month before the race. So it's the event of the year, in my opinion. Was last year, it will be again this year. Maurizio's coming over. I don't think there's any big hurry in getting your entry in, but there's a couple special events, the Slot Car Museum and the roundtable with Maurizio. Those are pretty limited. So if you want to come and attend those, I would register now. I don't know, Dennis, you have any other?
No, that's about it. There's rumors that Michael Nemes will be here as well for that. Michael is a German master modeler. He probably has the biggest slot car Instagram following in the world right now. But he was on the Electric Dreams team for the NSR 24-hour enduro. And I think Marco was saying that he's managed to convince him to come out for that race as well. So.
Sounds great. One other rule change, because of last year, for whatever reason, all 12 semifinalists were in Jaguar XJR 10s. This year, the Jaguar XJR 10 will have to run the wheel skirts. It's the only car that will. Everybody else is fine, but that car will have to run wheel skirts.
It wasn't one of the reasons that it was so good was because that was one of the few cars that you could fit the F1 wheels in, or is that?
Yeah, because of the width of the car. Yes. If you take the wheel spats, if you took the wheel spats off, you can get the car to like 3 millimeters wider total, or maybe a little more.
Yeah,
and it's already a very wide car.
The other reason, quite frankly, is if you look at the 12 guys that were in the semis, if you would have put odds and betting on who would be in the semis, most of those 12 would have been in the semis, whether they were driving a Jaguar or the Jaguar didn't exist.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
It was kind of a perfect storm of things happening. Why the top 12 were all Jaguars, partly because, like what Dennis said, the width, and partly because all the fast guys ran them.
Yeah, and all the fast guys ran them because of the width.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of a perfect storm.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
I drove the car also, but we have a limit how the width is. And when the width is the same with the other cars, it's not the fastest car.
Yeah.
Well, it's also considerably longer guide lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it extremely stable around that track. It wasn't so much that it was faster than the other cars. I think it was, but it was easy, much easier to drive fast.
Yeah, the point about that, when it gets that size, is you can run them lighter too. So you get better acceleration and brakes. You don't have to be carrying a lot of weight to keep the car on. So yeah, I think even with running the wheel spats, the XJR 10 is going to be a difficult car to beat in that class around that track. But as Jim said, with the fact that we have to run bigger wheels now, it may not have quite the advantage it had the last time. I mean, I ran a Toyota last year and I finished 14th, and I was the third non-Jag in the whole field.
The Toyota is a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I ran the
Nissans are
86C, not the 88C.
The Nissans are going to be reckoned with because they're so light.
Yeah, the Nissan's a good car.
I ran a Jaguar XJR 9 at our local race last week and won with it, so it's a good car too.
Well, Toyota slotted Group C is the definition of a good slot car. The whole range. I mean, there's hardly a bad car in that whole lot, right?
Best class going is sort of variety, competition, ease,
Absolutely.
expense, everything else. So yeah.
Yeah, there's hardly a bad car in the whole class.
What tires are you guys running for that?
G25?
I ran Ultra Grips last year. I'm pretty sure I'll run Ultra Grips this year.
Yeah, I would think so. You're allowed to use any tire, so the chances are that a lot of people will be on Ultra Grips. I ran N22s last year, but it'll depend on the car and the day. I mean, sometimes the track will be such that a G25 will work. I mean, I know Todd Ullery has done it, that he's run G25s where everybody else is running Ultra Grips, and the car was magnificent. And I think it'll depend on the day, the temperatures, the amount of running, how the track builds up traction, all of those kind of things.
And this is not an endurance race or a team race. It's like just mains and a final, and then
it's a 2-day event. The Friday is qualifying. The Friday is practice. Saturday is qualifying only, where everybody gets a minute individually, and then the Sunday from that qualifying we'll take groups of 6 from the bottom up, right? And everybody will run 3 minutes a lane. In that, then the top 12 guys from all of those will go into 2 semifinals, and the top 6 from there will go into a final, which will be 5 minutes a lane. So yeah, it's quite a lot of racing if you're one of the really fast guys.
Yeah, and you work your way up to the top. Yeah.
Sunday was a long day, but it's just like I said, it's the event of the year.
It's a great event because there's so many people, and you get a decent amount of time to talk to everybody and to sit and shoot the breeze and meet everybody again, and meet new guys who are coming in. Last year we had guys in from Texas and a couple of other places. I'm sure we'll get a lot more this year.
All right, cool beans. Thanks for the heads up, and people.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Mark, who was doing his podcast at the Slot Festival, I saw a few spattered about. So, great to come over. Wrong time of the year, and you're the other side. So, what, 5,000 miles? So,
yeah.
Have a great day, great weekend.
Yeah, I've heard that the festival was really good this year.
Yeah, possibly. I didn't see much of
You were at the track the whole time?
basically, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I saw, it was very. I popped out on Saturday, probably about 11:30 out the room to use the toilet, and I almost had. It's just a hallway. There was a couple of tracks there, and obviously there was a couple of people selling some stuff as well. But it was it was really busy. As I say, that's about all I saw of it. So, obviously room running the track, obviously both days. But I quickly ran through it on Sunday morning when I got there. One thing that did stand out was the quality of some of the scenery, etc. You know, you basically used to go to these things, and it was just like your track is behind you, Greg. Yeah, it was just a table, a track, you race around it. You now turn up, and everything's got scenery on it. You know, and it's great. You know, so that I saw. That's my sort of highlight. I spent most of the time racing. So
yeah, lots of videos on YouTube from Wayne and Travis and Pete. I think
Wayne's, and Travis's people. You know, they're both going to do. It may be a week or two. Obviously, they've got to edit it all out, etc. But Pete and Travis seemed to have a good time. They went to loads of places. Went to William, Mercedes World, up to Walls Racing. So I think Travis has had a busy weekend.
Yeah, so not hard to find videos of that. So if you haven't already seen the videos, you know, do a little YouTube search for Gaydon Slot Car Festival, and you'll see just all kinds of things. So thanks for your and thank you for your service. You know, at racetrack, doing all that work. So I wasn't there obviously, but you know, looks like everybody had a great time, and you were instrumental in that. So thank you for everybody there.
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of. It's quite funny. I was speaking to Sean from Pendle. Obviously, put a shout out for helpers. Yep. Guess how many replies he had?
You.
He already had me, so I've been there.
So not a whole lot.
It's 15, 20 minutes up the road where I live, so it's ideal for one, basically.
Wow.
And then there was, he murmured something about an hourly rate, and obviously Sean being northern and quite sparing with his money, sort of, no thanks.
I mean, I'm sure most people that went to the event wanted to attend the event, you know, not just be at the track the whole time.
Well, that's the thing. It's, you know, there's the traders and obviously all. Couple hundred people. Basically, that's it all weekend, and I just feel sorry for the people that actually have to do it as a living. You know, every week, whatever a trade show around the twist. You know, obviously, this is a hobby. It's once a year. You know, I can cope with that.
All right, thanks for that,
John
Underwood and. Gio and Henry. Henry, did you have your hand up for the technical question, or did you have club stuff you wanted to talk about?
Oh, it's a technical question.
Okay, so Gio, did you have club stuff you wanted to talk about? Maybe he stepped away. No, there he is.
No, he's back again.
There is a Wayne also with his hands up.
Uh-oh. Wayne, what did you want to talk about?
It was Club Corner, and I wanted to talk about a slot car race, or a couple actually, that I got involved in at the weekend. I went to the Slot Festival.
So before you start, are you going to take half an hour?
You got 5 minutes.
Just want to know, so I go and get to breakfast.
You guys are freaking brutal, you know that.
You're welcome to leave at any time, Gio.
Yeah. In fact,
Wayne, you can have my 5 minutes.
On the way out.
So then I think I would go first, Greg. Screw Wayne.
You already opened the door for Wayne. Go ahead, Wayne.
Well, I actually owe John a thank you because I enjoyed very much what he was responsible for at the weekend. He took care and looked after of all the race meetings that took place, or both the race meetings that took place on the big polycar layout in one of the rooms. And fortuitously for me, I did not intend to go there to race, but by lunchtime on the Sunday, he was stuffing a spare car into my hand and convincing me I should join in with the Slotted DTM event. Having had no practice at all with the track or the layouts or the cars, I've never even driven a Slotted DTM. It was then my task to try and find a controller to borrow. Successfully achieving that. Unfortunately, during my qualifying attempts, I did 20 laps on all 4 lanes. I was the controller that I borrowed was in the use of someone else who was also on the podium. So I was back on the Lend, and then I got a controller that it was configured in such a way that I couldn't handle it. Needless to say, I qualified very, very close to the back. Enjoyed racing with some of the children that also qualified near the back. And I think I bumped up one final and then went out, but had great fun doing it. The other race that I got involved with, I actually managed to capture a video clip of. I know that most of you guys will know of this because you'll either be a subscriber or you'll have already spotted it. But you may recognize the guy to my left in that picture.
Oh, yeah, Marco.
So I happened to bump into him about 3 or 4 times during the event. And this one time, he was already stood at the polycar layout. And so I suggested that we had a race together. And yeah, we used a couple of those slotted BRZs to have about a minute of fun together.
I'm beating you.
I was going to say, I thought you were the one that was chasing him, right?
Yes.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Well, luckily Marco wasn't there long enough to issue you the restraining order he wanted to.
Yeah, I think he was stalking him, not that it just occasionally found him on the track.
You were racing those BRZs basically stock out of the box, right? So they were magnet cars.
Yes.
Yeah.
They went relatively well as magnet cars, but I think there was a distinct difference. I think if we'd have swapped controllers, the result might have been different because I just could not keep up. Marco knew that, and he was gracious in making the cars run closer together for several parts of the video. So, yeah, I think I actually commented that I was flat nearly everywhere, and I'd never driven the things, so it was like immediate, like spur of the moment decision to even try and get the camera out. He didn't know it was going to happen. I just said, "Do you fancy a quick slot car race while I make a video of it?" He said, "Yeah, no problems."
Yep.
So there we go. That was my last 2 slot car races, both impromptu on the spur of the moment, and a lot of fun.
Awesome. Good stuff. Good times at the slot car festival for everybody, apparently. Geo disappeared, I guess. He's not even going to bother.
I'm
He went for
still
breakfast.
here.
You want to do a club corner?
Yeah, I can do a quick one.
Okay, you got 5 minutes.
Only? So I'm being treated as Wayne?
Yeah, you did try to put a restriction on me.
You take a good long time too sometimes, Gio.
That's true. I mean, this was the last on the analog one. Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, pretty quick. So we had last night, so 5 of us came along. So we had Terry, Mike, then Alex, myself, and Ian on the McLarens. So yeah, I mean the top 3 cars are really going fast now. I mean the motors I think are binding in, and there was a big gap with the other 2. I think Alex is also getting back on his finger. And so we did like as usual 5 minutes practice. Already you can see that the cars are going quite a different pace. The top 3 compared to the other 2. Then set up for qualify. So qualify wise, I think Ian and Alex were kind of in front of me for most of the time. And then they had to pit for doing like a splash and dash, people going out, and I had the truck full myself with just 10% of fuel, which means full power. And I managed to squeeze a 5-6. I had basically 2 laps. So first lap was a clean one, and the second one I managed the 5-6-1, which is pretty fast at the voltage that we are running. So set up a grid for race 1. Race 1 was pretty good, very close between the 3 of us. I mean,
You need to zoom in on those. We can't really see the numbers.
I'm not, yeah, I mean, I'm not talking specific numbers, but you know, the race was just like between the 3 of us taking over each other multiple times, crashing, and then the other were going over the pit. So at the end, I managed to kind of, because my car is very good with the fuel consumption, as he's also young. As you can see over here, this is a number, amount of fuel that he used per laps. So which means I can stay longer while the other one is to refuel.
Yeah.
So Jan crashed so I had to repeat twice, I didn't crash. So I managed to take over from him and also from Alex, although it was very close. I mean, actually I crossed the line and he was just behind me, so it didn't just count. So less than a lap. So then we moved to race 2. And race 2, yeah, talking about the fuel management, the strategy, I basically screw up a big time. So in my last few stop, I thought that I put enough, but actually I didn't. So there was like 30 seconds to go, and Jan, Alex were just behind me. So by the time I had to kind of do my splash and dash with the 20 seconds to go, they basically overtook me. Actually, Jan completed 1 lap in front of me, and Alex went over me. So yeah, kind of from first, I was first for most of the freaking race. But then basically kind of, yeah, went up like third. Now and actually in this race as well, there was a lot of crap happening. So talking about mechanical accident, I lost a front wheel. So the axle came out. So I was, so you saw this stuff running around. And it was so tripod, yeah. And the car was doing really well. I mean, there were like big, you know, the wheels from the Bendy are huge, right? So there was this big stuff bouncing across the track. At the beginning, I thought was the insert. So it was the whole axle. So, and then after a couple, so basically I took the car out, which means damage point. So put it back in, couple of laps, and then the car sees it. So basically I was not moving. I said, what the heck is going on? Because I had the washer. I thought that, oh damn, the washer went inside the motor because we could not find them. The washer in the front axle. So I took the car out again at the damage point. And there was some chunk of rubber inside the motor, so I didn't cover the lower part of the opening at the bottom of the motor. A big chunk of rubber went in. Anyway, I said, okay, motor is screwed, so let's see what happens. But still, basically, kind of managed to stay on the lead. And then, I mean, I had like 1 damage point left, and I didn't repair. But then the splash and dash basically cost me the race. But anyway, then when like in semi dark race, this again was a good race. I mean, nothing really noticeable, no wheels went lost or washer or anything, so it was a pretty straightforward. Again, closer racing. I mean, there is I have to push all the time. Also, the pre-wise have to push all the time. Otherwise, there is no way that you can keep the lead. Jan cars is super quick. I mean, this basically this 558 is just enough for that at the end of the straight. But usually my car is very close to what Jan is doing, so he's really enjoying it. And again, then with so these are the last race, completely dark. So again, basically the similar type of running as the other races. It's interesting because sometimes Jan and myself have a similar kind of fuel consumption here, 1.9, 2.0. And this in the last race, I think it was pushing really hard to get onto me because actually the distance at the end was not that much. And so maybe he was kind of using a bit more fuel. Anyway, so that's us for the day.
So how do you guys determine the winner at the end of the night? And do you like keep points for a series, and or is it just
No, we're not. No, it is what it is. I mean, I'm not doing any kind of points or anything.
okay? So
Because
each individual race is just an individual race, and you won that race, he won the other race, and so on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just like interesting to see the number of laps that you do in a race, whether you're improving or not, fastest lap, damage points. How I mean, how you can manage your car.
Fuel consumption, all that stuff.
Yeah, fuel consumption. It's a bit of function of the motor that you have in your car. To be honest with you, I mean, draw a lot because I can see the difference when I was running the Mercedes AMG, which has much less. I mean, the motor, it's the same Baby Raptor. Oh, yeah, it's a Baby Raptor, one from Sideways. But it has like maybe 1000 K less. It's just a draw of luck, whatever you get. And the fuel consumption, because I had to push all the time, was like 2.2, 2.3, which is not ideal. The Bentley is a nice car. I mean, although it's a huge beast, I mean, I have like at least maybe 2 grams over as a body just of a young McLaren, but it's very stable platform. And I really enjoy it. The only thing is that I'm not used anymore to the speed of the car now, and with the tire simulation, when the tires goes below like 50, they start losing brake. And so basically I had a couple of offs because it doesn't give you any kind of warnings, right? I mean, just let off. And at the end of the main straight, you go barreling down. You do these like 50 laps or 40 laps without any problem. And then 41, because you get to the 50 mark and the tires let go. And it's not a huge amount, but it's enough for messing up with your brake point and the car just to go straight. It's bloody annoying.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't know. Maybe they'll be able to make it a more gradual for the new version. I don't know. Hopefully,
isn't that why
I don't know.
Simulation just is a bit of a fail for digital racing. It's just throws you like that.
I mean, it's however they implemented it. I don't. The RCS 64 and RCS 02. It's the only race management that has ever manipulated how your car drives, right? Other systems have done fuel load, so it limits your top speed, but when you turn on tire simulation and weather simulation, it also changes when you hit the throttle, how quickly your car takes off, and when your tires are worn, like Gio was talking about, when you let up the throttle, how long it takes before your car actually starts to brake, right? So it'll continue at the speed that you had been going until your brakes kick in, which means it's not coasting. It's under that same level of power until your brakes kick in, and then whatever your brake level is what happens. So it feels like when you're driving, and then suddenly you go under 50% and you lose, your braking is now 0.1 seconds later than when you let go of the trigger. You don't have a tenth of a second between your brake point and going too deep if you're driving hard. So now that you're going 1.1 seconds too deep into the turn, you're coming off unexpectedly. And that was kind of always a complaint about RCS 64 is how it happens with very little warning. And then when it happens, it seems to be such a drastic difference.
Very severe.
Very severe. And so the only way to, when you're turning on all those simulations, you need to drive hard, but you also have to drive conservatively so that when that happens, you're not going to come out. So it's definitely a tricky balancing point. Cool. And what I was going to mention is it's always fun, like Gio was Gio shows those end screens. Everybody loves to see their fast lap and how many laps and all that stuff. But one of the fun things about those programs when you run the simulations is seeing how much fuel you used and how many times you stopped and how many damage points you did and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you can see, even though you guys have the same number of laps and the same, very close best lap time, you can see, oh, well, you're ahead of me because you can see right there, I used way more fuel than you did. And I had to take on more fuel when I did a splash and dash or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, the only simulation I've ever run in a digital race was fuel. And it was manageable because when you ran out, your car didn't stop. You weren't out the race or anything like that. The penalty was only small by comparison to the duration of the race because it was a long race.
Yep.
But I can manage fuel simulation, especially if you've got a screen where you can glance up at your fuel gauge whilst you're driving, which is another talent in itself. It's a different thing to have to learn to do. It's quite challenging if you're not familiar with it.
Glance at the screen and make sure you get a clock of your fuel level and how many laps and stuff are left and how much long. Yeah.
But for the tires also you have like a gauge that tells you how much tires you have left. The main problem is that I know where or when my tires are basically gonna let it go, right? So around, as I say, 50% the tires are, you will start feeling. I mean, the description of the tire simulation that Greg was giving was for RCS 64 when on SSD. But I think with the Oxygen, RCS2 or 2, they're using basically the brake strength for reducing it. They override what you have on your controller.
So it's better on RCSO2.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
The only problem that compared to RCS 64 kicks in much earlier. Like I say, like 50% of your tires, it's already there. You start feeling it. Instead, I remember with RCS that was much lower than that when you were start feeling. Else, of course, you need also to match the truck condition, which basically for RCS2 is not a problem. So we are missing one over the simulation.
Okay.
So it's just basically dry all the time. Yeah. But it's enough. I mean, I can tell you that it's blood enough. I mean, the other one would be also nice to have, but already like this, it's very, very kind of interesting. So you need to basically look, and that's why also I think the simulation works in a very contained environment, right? I mean, something like this will never work on a large settings where basically there is only one screen or project stuff that basically nobody can read, right? Because nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So you need to have
you wouldn't be using anything more than fuel at the very most.
But still, you need to be able to see the screen, right? I saw the Barcelona stuff that they did with the polycar track. I mean, they were using the what's called a PC Lab Calendar, and there was just one screen down there. I mean, I don't know how they managed to see it, but it was
I mean, you pretty much would have to have a dedicated teammate watching your levels and talking in your ear while you're driving, so you know.
Yeah. Or maybe for something like what the Smart Race is doing, like having maybe a dedicated device, a satellite device with your pit information. So if we manage to get, if we manage to get something like that, then that will be really cool.
Yeah.
Race coordinator puts announcements out as your fuel level gets low.
Yeah, most of them do announcements, but it's you don't want a cacophony of announcements for all of the drivers, especially at a big event with lots of
Plus, you may not want the competition to know anyway.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, at the moment, that's one of the big strategic, let's say, cheating that you can do. Because if I see that someone that is following me or is in front of me, for instance, has less fuel than I have, I know that they're going to stop before me. So I don't need to kind of, crash and burn to try to chase them up because I can see how much fuel they've left. So you can play with this. But if we move out from the main central screen and move everything to a satellite device and leave it there on the big screen, just the standings, I think that the strategy will be even more interesting, right? Because you don't know what the others are doing or what they have.
Yeah, I agree. So let's use our last few minutes on Henry's technical question. What's up, Henry?
When I build a car, I want the chassis as low as I can, and normally it's getting about 105. And now I'm gonna race again on Barcelona on an Inco track, and I see guys who took spaces between the guide and the guide post. And at that moment, I think you raise your chassis.
Right.
And what are the pros and cons for that reason? Because I higher up the chassis is higher, and I don't want that. So what's the pro for shimming down the shoe, the flag?
If the track's irregular or bumpy or uneven joints,
yeah,
it'll stop the chassis rubbing on the track.
Yeah.
As far as handling goes, no advantage whatsoever.
I'll show you maybe in Barcelona, we're going to drive with the front wheels off the track.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can
Will
put
it
a
be the
guide
same?
shim in, or similarly, you can raise the front axle, which would probably be a bit smarter move.
Yeah, but you'd want to do both you wouldn't want your chassis dragging on the track. You'd still want your guide to be the thing that's
right. You want a certain amount of clearance between the track and the chassis.
Right.
And then separately, you want to raise the front wheels so that they don't roll.
Right.
Yeah.
So that the car is effectively riding on the guide.
Yeah.
Basically, because you don't want it being upset by the bumps.
The best case is shimming them down a little bit.
Well,
the only reason to shim the guide down is if the chassis is too low at the front.
Right. So I mean, drive the car around.
Yeah.
If it's catching on any joints, put a thin shim until it stops, and then raise the front axle.
Okay, it doesn't. So I'm clear.
Yeah.
Henry, your 1.0 millimeters is quite high.
It's
even
high,
for plastic Ninko.
Yeah.
No, 0.5.
Oh, you said 1.05.
Sorry.
Yeah, 0.5 is getting there. It's really, really quite low. In fact, we have a regulation, a tech inspection regulation about 0.5 underneath the front splitter as a minimum.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But they don't have that rule in Barcelona.
Okay.
Well, when everyone complies with that regulation here in the UK for the disco races, we never have problems where chassis hit track joints. So all the layouts we ever use, and we take the same regulation to Suzuka, 0.5 is enough.
Right.
So as long as you've got the 0.5, there's no benefit to adding any more shim.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Go as low as you can, Henry, according to the rules.
Yeah.
And if it's as low as you can go, and the car doesn't hit any track joints,
yeah,
you're fine. If it does, you put a shim and then adjust the grub screws on your front axle and lift it off the track a bit. Lift the front wheels off the track a tiny bit.
Yeah, I ask him because I don't have experience with driving with the front wheels off the track. So
right.
I've got a comment on that car for that race, Henry. Yeah. I know that you discussed it with me and I really couldn't answer, so I'm going to throw this to the other experts. The thing that Henry's noticed about the other cars that have raced in the same race in the past events is that they tend to run a really, really narrow front track width. Neither of us are sure quite why. Anyone any idea?
If your front wheels aren't touching the track, the track width is basically irrelevant.
They're just a passenger, I think.
Well, wouldn't they become basically weight that's just being thrown around? So you'd want them in closer to the center.
Well,
you see, the question is, does the front outside wheel become an outrigger when the car goes through the turn? And if it's close enough to the track, then I think yes, it does. But if it's so close to the center line, I mean, we're talking probably 2 to 3 millimeters each side. They've got these wheels tucked.
Wow.
It's really obvious when you pop the body shell on. And I noticed in your build video, Henry, that you've gone the same way as the competition, rather than running the wheels further apart.
The way you've got your car set up there, Henry, those front wheels are miles off the track.
Correct.
And the car is not going to lean far enough to touch either one of those tires.
Correct.
Yeah, the chassis will hit.
So wide track, narrow track is completely irrelevant.
So So knowing that you're not touching the track at all ever,
No, I don't think so.
would it make any difference if they were out wide versus in narrow as far as?
No, not really. Not
No,
much.
except that
Not
you would
really.
have to carry the weight of the spacers to make it wide.
Yeah, that's why I used the least material that I've got.
Okay, so you save weight by bringing them in because you don't
Yeah.
have spacers that hold them out.
It's all plastic and how do you call it?
The question is, Henry, have you ever done that before? Because if you were taking that same car to Suzuka, for example, would you have set it up the same way?
No.
No, you wouldn't, would you? And it's the same surface that you're going to race on, you see?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why none of the disc community seem to do what you got built on that car that the Spanish do.
Yeah, but for disc, I think you have to touch the track. You cannot basically lift completely the wheel.
Oh, that's part of the rules, the rule set.
What tires are you running, Henry?
The front tires?
No, the rear tires.
That's also. I raced the car with training on my own Ninkel track with NSRs, and they do well. But they choose scale auto.
Okay,
of course.
Scale auto sponge or scale?
No, rubber.
AS25 rubber.
Yeah. And the scale auto are not so good, not as good as the NSR ones, but it's a 6 hours race. So I think they choose scale auto for the endurance, but I don't know.
Is it the scale auto gray ones or black ones?
Black.
G25.
Yeah. The only reason I asked was I wasn't sure if you're running on sponge tires, which explains a whole bunch of stuff on the front end.
Yeah, the sponge tire would compress, wouldn't it? Where the rubber doesn't. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, there are two. Scalato came out with the new compound, the AS20. So I don't know if they are doing that or the 25.
It's the 25. I read the regulations because
you read
a few questions.
It's 47, 56 AS25. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
AS25. Guys, I have to leave, but I found a couple of pictures I wanted to show Den before we. Do you mind if I interrupt a bit, just for a second?
Yeah.
Okay. He said, looking for his pictures. Okay.
These are non-technical people, eh?
Yeah.
Is that up?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is one of the Atlas motors, Dan. It's not the same one you have. This is the 206, which has green wire and ball bearings and a few other little things. These have Alnico magnets in them, which really wear down after time. They lose their magnetism. So what I've done is taken two small dot magnets here. You just align the polarity and put the magnets in the center of the armature stack, and that livens the motor up a fair bit. You've got to use pretty strong little magnets here, but it will reduce the heat in the motor by increase the magnetism and blah, 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 a bunch of other little things. So that's a cool thing to do. If the motor is an issue, please let me know. I've got quite a few of the green wire ones and quite a few of the brown wire ones as well.
Thank you.
And on the...
Can you not zap that magnet? Because it seems like a train motor where you can have this zapper that you can use.
Yeah, they are train motors. And here is, this is a slight variation. The motor in your car was a Challenger. This is the Super Challenger, slightly different.
Yep.
But again, this has Alnico magnets, and I've just used some flat dot magnets on the poles on the top of the motor, and you can't see them, but they're under the motor as well. You just have to use a compass or something like that to align the polarity. And that will help the motor out. And then if you really get energetic with that motor.
I'm just getting tired listening to you, let alone getting energetic with the motor.
Yeah, this is a Super Challenger that I took apart and reworked and did a whole bunch of stuff. The major thing that I did on your motor and the Super Challenger, The axle runs through the plastic and they act as bushings. So on this car, I have bored out the plastic axle cups and installed some single flange oil lights.
Yep.
And that really helps smooth the car out a lot. So there's a lot of little funky things you can do to those motors, and you know, it still is what it is, but with a few little bits and pieces. This, I also put the comm on this and did a few other things. So this is like the world's best super challenger motor for what that means. It's still not a rocket ship, but it's a great super challenge.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. That adds another 3 to the 117 unfinished projects I've got.
Yeah.
All right. On that information, we're going to stop